Well, I wanted to start by asking, what was your initial impetus in making this film? Was it wanting to set a romantic comedy during the time of COVID, or did the timing of everything just kind of come about in the writing, I guess?
Yeah, well, just as COVID broke out and quarantine broke out, my boyfriend, Karan Soni, who's in the movie, obviously, and I were across the country from each other. And we were facing the prospect of an industry that was more or less shut down for the foreseeable future because almost every
Mhm.
production had been halted, including the show that Karan was on, and including a movie of mine that I had written that was supposed to go like days before quarantine began. So we conceived of this plan to make a movie. And it wasn't that we set out to, we specifically had this urge to do a rom-com set in the COVID era. It was more that we wanted to make something and do something at a time when it seemed impossible. So we made the project contained to make it feasible. And even with a very contained project like this, I think our biggest line item was still the COVID testing budget, but
Mhm.
it was conceived of, it wouldn't exist without COVID, weirdly.
So by having so when did you actually shoot? When was the production schedule?
Yeah, so we wrote the script in July of 2020, and then we were shooting by September of 2020.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's one of the main reasons why it's like stuck to one location. And I was wondering because in the third act of the film, Geraldine kind of leaves for a chunk of that third act. Was that always built into the schedule that way, that you were going to have them part so you could bring them back together?
Yeah, well, it was always built into the story. It wasn't for scheduling reasons. We only shot the movie in 8 days, so
Oh wow.
it was already such a
Yeah.
schedule. But yeah, it was sort of built into the story. But the idea was to specifically look at the feeling of loneliness and disconnection we were all feeling in the COVID era. In the
Mhm.
movie, it happens in a more extreme way. But I'm a doctor as well, and I had served very briefly, like for 5 days on the COVID wards right before I finished residency. And I was struck by how alone people were in their illness. I had a patient
Mhm.
who had been hospitalized for 3 months and just wanted someone to sit with him, but nobody had time. And it was scary to be in those rooms, even with full PPE. This was in the era before vaccination. So
Yeah.
he would cry anytime anyone left the room, literally just start sobbing. Then you would go back and sit with him. And then the moment you got up, he would start crying again. And it was that feeling of like, what has this illness done to all of us on a micro, level and on a macro level?
Yeah. Do you feel like were you at all nervous about setting a film during the time of COVID? Was there ever an issue of you feeling like, is this too soon, or anything like that? Do you feel like there is even a too soon when it comes to art and creating film?
It's a really good question. And honestly, throughout this entire process, I have not like resolved my answer to it personally. I think in some ways it was, other ways we need art to reflect and process what we're going through as we're going through it. So
Mhm.
I honestly don't know. What I do know is at the core, especially as a physician, it's hard to ignore it, even in the things we write and create. And a part of me feels like it wouldn't have felt real, at least to me, without it. But I have no
Yeah.
idea if it's too soon. Probably is and isn't.
It didn't, I've only seen maybe 8 or 10 COVID set movies in the last, few months. And this is by far the best one that I've seen, because you don't use COVID as a way to punctuate anything other than emotion. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? It doesn't feel like you're taking advantage of the time period at all. It feels natural. And I because I there's been a few that I've watched that were just really felt manipulative emotionally, and this one never felt that way when going into, especially what she was feeling in the final, because you have her feeling the physical manifestations of COVID, and you have him feeling the emotional ones. To me, that kind of encapsulated everything in a way that I
I
don't
think
think
you went
any.
out unless it's my internet.
Oh, sorry.
No, 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 not at all. I heard the last thing I heard you say was him feeling the emotional ones.
Right. Yeah. Like, she was feeling the physical and he was feeling the emotional. So in that way, you managed to encapsulate kind of everything that we're all feeling,
Hmm.
but just within two characters. Did you, in the writing, did you always know it was going to be a two-hander like that?
Yeah, we really were trying to make this movie makeable. So it was definitely, it has
Right.
to be a two-hander. Liz is in the movie as a voice. I guess I'm
Oh,
in it
nice.
too now. Liz plays the roommate who sadly passes away. It's very sad.
Oh, okay.
But it's
Not doing too good.
no, but part of the reason we never leave the apartment is because we literally could not. We just, that was the only place we could shoot. And for example, like we couldn't even show the room, the hospital room that she was in, because we were just
Right.
in this ranch in Palm Springs. Like, how are we didn't have the money to like build a hospital room. So
Nice. Okay.
that's why all you see of the hospital room is her face.
And
Right. Right.
and the thing is that in addition to the budget, it also made for shooting so much safer. Like when we filmed, we had quarantine before filming, then we did testing before we filmed, then we were testing like every day when we were filming, and so we were filming in a bubble. And so by also limiting the locations, we're just at one house, you know, and having a lot of outdoor space at the house because it was like on a bigger property. It also made it possible budget wise, but also made it possible safety wise, because that was of the utmost importance to both me and Roshan.
Right. Are the safety concerns that you guys followed during the filming of this still kind of what you're going through in filming now? I know with the vaccine it's different, but are you still having to be, that diligent?
I know, for instance, I've done another movie kind of like this, where it's another kind of like filming in a bubble movie. It was bigger. We definitely had more locations, more people, and you definitely have the same mindset of like you're doing the same kind of protocol, so to speak, but it's with the feeling of like I know how to deal with this. I understand it. Whereas it felt like we were in like the new frontier or like the Wild West. Like it was really very nerve wracking, and then also just kind of dealing with unions and different things. It was like there was so much uncertainty. So now it seems a lot more clear cut,
Yeah.
and manageable, even though you're still taking the same precautions.
Okay. And and Liz, what made you want to get involved with the film? Was it the script, or what was your initial draw to it?
So Duplass Brothers Productions, I had a long-term relationship with Mel Eslin, who's the president there. And she reached out to me, and this is like August. And I knew, Roshan, that you wrote the script, like in the summer, but I didn't realize July, because
Yeah.
I guess I got the script like in July. And so I thought maybe you wrote it like, I don't know, like maybe May or June. That's so hilarious. But so she came to me and was like, I don't know how you're feeling as far as like as a producer right now during COVID. And so she's like, but I've got this really cool project. We're looking for a producer, both someone that could be a creative producer with the filmmakers and also someone who, will be on the ground there overseeing the production since we won't be there. And so basically, she sent me the script. I fell in love with the script. And then I had a Zoom with Roshan and Karan, and then I fell in love with them. And so definitely was the story plus the team, the filmmakers. And then I will say, on a more logistical mindset, I was like, if I'm going to produce a movie and I'm going to get back into it during this very scary time, the idea of having my director be a Harvard MD made me feel a lot safer. And so I was like, okay, this is the project that I'm going to do this on. And again, I cannot tell you how much safety was. I mean, that was of the utmost importance to Roshan, just as much or more, probably more so than me. And so, it was a constant conversation. And so we were all excited about the idea of creating art during this time. But we also really were wanting to do it really carefully. And so I was like, okay, this is the project. In addition to, again, like just emotionally responding to the story.
Right. And can you tell me a little bit about, like, I know the Duplass brothers kind of have producing movies down to like a science, basically, like just the way that they, I remember seeing an interview recently with Mark where he was talking about how he could just read a script and kind of have it all in his head every moment of like budget and location and everything. Is it nice to have that kind of a shorthand when you're producing a film where it's just done on such a like expert level?
Yeah, it was really a wonderful experience. And honestly, shooting on, like, the actual shoot was like magical. It, like, the whole crew bonded. It was an amazing experience, and a lot of the people we got were recommendations that had worked on different Duplass Brothers productions. But they just have they have such both the structure in place and support to make the film, and then they are very supportive creatively to let the filmmakers create the art they want to make. So it was like the perfect balance and blend. And I also feel too, like, one of the conversations we did have was this whole thing of like going away and filming outside of Los Angeles. And they've done that a bunch. And what we had a discussion about, this is, like Mel and Mark and the team, and then Rosh and Karan and stuff, was how it creates this family. And I feel like, I think one of the reasons you responded so much to the movie, and we've gotten similar feedback, in addition to the authenticity of the story and Roshan's direction, and the fact that he like came from like, has this medical background, I also think we did create this little family when we shot the movie. And so that intimacy, I think, bleeds into the creation of the movie. And so that was something that we talked kind of heavily about. And again, that goes back to the kind of Duplass model or mindset of, you go away, shoot this movie, and it just really has a certain energy or spirit to it, which I think really helps the actual overall film.
Well, and that's interesting that you say that about like the familial aspect of that, because like, to me, the thing that instantly pulled me into the movie within the first 3 minutes was the relationship between Geraldine and Karan. Like, did they know each other before filming? Because it felt like they had such a friendship that was just instantly there the moment they were on screen together the first time.
Yeah, they had actually worked for 2 seasons at that point on a show called Miracle Workers that's on TBS TNT, and they had not yet filmed the 3rd season, but did shortly after we made the movie, actually. So they've known each other for at least 2 years, if not longer, and have a kind of shorthand with each other. But it's because of that relationship that Geraldine agreed to do the movie, because I had never met Geraldine before.
Okay.
I didn't know her outside of Karan. I was a big admirer of her talent from the things she'd been in, but
yeah, she made me laugh until I cried in Blockers. Like, I still
funny.
am blown away by her in that film.
Kind of do it all. She's good at comedy and at drama, which is a rare combo. I think that's true of Karan too.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah.
And they both have such chemistry. Like, they've got this built-in friendship, which I think helped in this kind of scary time of making a movie where they trusted each other, trusted Roshan. But then I think they just have chemistry that you can't explain. It's just there.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though
Right.
Karan's gay, and so am I, and we're a couple.
Mhm.
I know. It's so crazy, but it's true.
I know, just directing him through falling in love with Geraldine.
Right. How was that fun to do?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy working with Karan. I had never like worked with him and didn't really even know what he did as an actor, because you don't really know, because everything is cut together. So I had, of course, seen like Deadpool, but I'd seen those movies years before I met him, and his ability to improvise and be funny on camera, and I feel like he made up like at least 25% of his lines, if not more, was incredible. He's so funny. And there was a real, like, it felt like we were watching theater sometimes.
Yes. Rosh and I literally would have to try not to laugh behind the monitor.
They cut so many of my laughs were a huge issue in the audio stage of the movie. I laugh very easily and very loudly, and I have no control over it. I also cry very easily. But yeah, my laughs had to be removed so many times, because it just always made me laugh.
Well, going back to what you just said about it feeling like theater at some points, because the dialogue between the two of them is so tight, and because it is a two-hander, do you ever see this script or this story being put into a different medium? Like, as a theatrical production or as a podcast or anything like that?
Yeah, that would be fun. I've always wanted to do a play actually, but the movie is coming out hopefully next year. We just secured a distributor and we'll announce soon. So if,
Right.
assuming that all happens, we probably don't need to, but
Right.
it would be fun to it would be really especially with those two. But
Yes,
even,
Right.
yeah, they're
I
just
could
so
I
yeah.
could totally see them doing a play or a TV series or something based off this. I totally could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I instantly wanted to see what the next scene was. As soon as the movie ended, I was like, well, damn it, now what happens, you know? But
Wow.
that's perfect because their relationship to me is felt so alive while watching it that I feel like now I get to imagine like every other stage past that, you know? It's
Yeah.
yeah, just it's a lovely like a lovely connection that you built between them with that dialogue and those performances.
Yeah, I really think a huge credit of is them. They're just they're very natural and intuitive actors. And as Liz knows well, we barely had time for more than two takes, and most often I feel like did one because of how fast we had to move shooting in 8 days. But they're the kind of performers with whom you can pull that off. I don't know that that would be true of everybody, but they just didn't.
Right.
They're such natural, intuitive actors. It's a really amazing thing to me. I have to say, as a former writer, I didn't really know what actors did. And in TV, I just feel like I didn't completely understand until this movie what actors do. And
Right.
so critical. Liz is an actress too, so I'm sure she understood. But yeah, I didn't grasp it completely.
Like you weren't like you weren't aware of like how much they were going to like pull out of themselves into it or
I just feel like as a full-time writer before this movie was made, I was very focused on what I was doing and the
right.
words I was writing. And then if you write for long enough and write enough pages, you begin to feel that their purpose is just to deliver the lines that you've written. But it is so much more than that. And
Mhm.
what is amazing is actually how little we hear dialogue and follow it. We actually miss most dialogue because we're so attuned to the way that people behave, and what we're actually paying attention to on like a deep or fundamental level when we watch something, I believe, is behavior, because we're animals and we're looking at what they're doing. So it's very
Right.
sobering as a writer because you can spend a lot of time agonizing over lines, but sometimes the lines don't matter at all, interestingly. I think that's
Right.
true of film in a way that it's not true of, say, a novel. But
Yeah, yeah. So for you, what do you feel like has been the most difficult? Being a doctor, being a director, being a writer?
oh, being a doctor is the hardest thing. Oh my God. I feel like even the most stressful day we had on the movie was not as stressful as a day in the hospital. But
Yeah.
yeah, just because I feel like medicine just really drains me emotionally. I give up so much of myself to it when I'm practicing.
Mhm.
So I often have trouble recovering, whereas directing and writing just feel like fun.
Is it something you think you'll ever go back to?
I still practice actually. I
Okay.
work 12 weeks of the year and I do so I'm part-time and I split it up into several chunks. And then yeah, I do oncology.
Okay. And I also wanted to ask what you hope people take away from this film. Like what feeling do you hope they leave the theater with? Do you want them like asking questions about like arranged marriages? Do you want them thinking about COVID safety? Do you want them to feel the romantic comedy bubbliness? Do you want just a hybrid of all of that? Like what do you hope they take away? Because there's so many big ideas in this film, like almost constant.
Yeah, my feeling is that the most important thing is reflecting on the importance of love and connection, because that was such a theme of what we were all feeling at the time that we made it. I also think that there is something interesting that the movie says about arranged marriage versus so-called love marriage, and how narrow our conception is, especially in the West, of what it takes to find a mate, because it's so built up here in a way that it's not in India. We have this conception of like, we're going to fall in love. It'll feel like we're struck by lightning. We'll find a perfect soulmate who is molded to us and our compatibilities in a way that was designed from us. It's a very like to be completely frank, imaginary way of conceiving of how you build a lifelong partnership. The Indian way is much more practical. It sees love as a union between two families, principally, even more than two people. And it doesn't imagine love as something that you're struck by lightning. It doesn't imagine love as something that happens to you. It imagines love as something that you create and build together. And that's really my feeling about the best way to do it. And Karan and I have been together for 3 years, and I've always felt our love is something practical that we built together. That is the thing that I feel like is a little bit missing in Western rom-coms, because Western rom-coms build into this notion of fate and destiny and the other half and all these things that, if you think about them long enough, are a little ludicrous. But
Right. It either hits you in the stomach or it doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Why would it work that way?
Right.
But I'm saying that probably maybe too much as a scientist. But I also feel like we forget in some ways, especially in the apps and all these people swiping left and right and all these options, and that we're looking for the perfect thing, and we forget that we play a role in creating the partnership that nourishes us. Like again, it doesn't happen to us. We create it. So
Yeah. And how about you, Liz? What do you hope people take away from the film?
Aside from kind of like the love and connection, or like kind of the next step, is just I think the movie ends on such a note of hope that in whatever form or facet, it's like I hope it gives people hope for connection, hope for, empathy, hope for love, hope for a brighter future, whatever that means.
Yeah. Well, thank you both very much for taking your time to talk to me. I don't want to keep you any longer. I know you've got some film festival stuff to be exploring.
yeah, no, thank you for having us and for hosting the movie. We really appreciate it and are so honored, honestly.
It's genuinely lovely. I also write for the local paper here, and I'll have a review for the film in the paper that comes out today, actually.
Oh,
so
that's so exciting.
Yeah, that should be out as well. So
well, you're doing God's work, promoting independent films and reviewing them and all this stuff. It's so crucial, because this is getting harder and harder to make these movies. So
yeah,
well, you've people like you.
You've made something really beautiful. Genuinely a very, very touching film.
That's so kind of
and
you.
Very funny. Like it's funny too, and like the balance of funny with a little bit of heartbreak and a little bit of bittersweet, just all of it. It's a really nice juicy stew.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll. I feel like there was a time when they made movies that make you laugh and cry all the time. Like
yeah.
It's a little bit faded away, so it's left to this ultra low budget scene.
Yeah.
Wrong too.
Yeah.
But anyways, we really appreciate you saying such kind words about the movie.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for sending your movie along. I mean, I can't wait to see what happens with it in the future.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Right on. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good seeing you,
Bye.
Liz, too. Bye, Jared.
Bye.